If you're someone who gets frustrated because you feel like you're getting tripped up by the same things over and over again, here's a quick tip for you. All of us have triggers. We all have pain points to heal from. That is not an issue. Our triggers are our body's way of signaling that there's an important thing that we need to heal from, or important needs that are not yet getting met. Okay, so it's really important to pay attention to our triggers instead of taking our triggers as signals that there's something wrong with us. You're already in a lot of pain, you're already in a lot of stress, do not add to it. So one way of doing so is by switching from an all or nothing perspective to a gradient perspective. And so instead of thinking of whether you get triggered, so yes, I got triggered, no, I didn't get triggered, consider it as how you get triggered. If you think about the how, you get a lot more qualitative data so that even when things are imperfect, or even when you still have things to heal from, that's a non-issue. You might still actually have made a lot of progress and a lot of movement that keeps you motivated to keep doing the work. So one of the ways that you can consider the how, or the qualitative data, is by considering how your triggers might show up across 4 different dimensions. And here are the 4 dimensions here. It's frequency, intensity, duration, and direction. So if you consider frequency, how often you get triggered, if you see how things used to be about 5 years ago, you might have gotten triggered around a topic, every day, every other day, or whatnot, that you're constantly in a state of agitation. Nowadays, you might still get triggered from time to time, but maybe it's like once a week, or anytime you interact with an unsafe person, or sometimes a family member. Then you can actually give yourself credit that, like on the whole, I'm able to retain my balance or take good care of myself. It's just that every once in a while, or maybe specific times of the year, that I might have to take better care of myself to be proactive in keeping my balance. So frequency, it was one dimension. If you were to gauge how things have been for you, let's say across the past year, if you think about it once every quarter, and the circumstances that were happening in your life during that time, on a scale of 1 to 10, what might you gauge about the frequency of your triggers? You might actually gain some more data that around certain times of the year, like tax season, that your blood pressure might spike, or you tend to get into more fights with your partner or whatnot. The second dimension is intensity, of how high or how pained you become around these triggers. So, you might have the frequency stay exactly the same. You get triggered once a week, but maybe the sting decreases over time. So you still have to deal with a situation, or you still have to deal with how you're feeling, but because it's not as intense, you're able to maintain your footing a lot better, or you've learned some tips around how to buffer or take care of yourself, maybe create boundaries, have hard conversations, etc., so that things don't escalate to that same degree. The third dimension is duration, of how long you stay in a triggered state. So often these dimensions do interact with each other, where the more you get triggered, or more frequently you get triggered, the more likely you're going to be staying in a triggered state. The longer we stay in a triggered state, the more likely we'll make reactive decisions. For example, emotional eating, overworking, underworking, drinking a lot, etc., Netflix binging, all those things, where you might stay in that stressed state, so your pain becomes more prolonged. Over time, as you do your personal work, let's say in therapy or in other kind of inner work experiences, you might find that you don't stay in that state as long. You found other helpful ways for you to regain your balance once you lose your footing. Then the duration itself might also change over time. So these 3 dimensions, I might measure it, let's say once a quarter on a 10-point scale. Instead of a yes or no, yes, I got triggered, no, I didn't get triggered metric, it's more of, along a spectrum, how are things showing up? I might say these numbers aren't quite linear, but think of these numbers like, on a Richter scale for earthquakes, that each point or each number you bump down makes it 10 times easier for you to take good care of yourself or to maintain your balance. So again, that's frequency, intensity, duration, and the last one is direction. Often our triggers might prompt us to express our pain or emotions onto unsuspecting passersby. They were just at the wrong place at the wrong time. So an example is, let's say someone who gets chewed out by their boss at work, they get frustrated, but they don't actually bring it up to their boss. They come home and they kick the dog. The dog had nothing to do with it. Or let's say there might be a partner who's trying to load the dishwasher, and this other person comes home and then starts criticizing about how the dishwasher is being loaded. That other partner had nothing to do with it. The dog had nothing to do with it, but because there's this misdirection of pain, now that there's a huge fight, the dog bites back or the partner snaps back, and there now is extra pain to have to deal with. So direction is super important about what happens when you get triggered. Where do you direct that pain, or what do you do with it? Some people might direct it towards other individuals. Some people might direct it towards an exercise, an activity, a substance, etc. The more we misdirect our pain, the further we get away from getting our needs met and our pain healed. So the more quickly we're able to redirect that towards an appropriate source. In the meantime, it might be a space like therapy or journaling or whatnot. As long as we stay more in the direction of addressing the issue directly, the more likely we'll resolve the situation that initially triggered us in the first place, and thereby these other numbers may also be bumped down as well. So again, the issue isn't whether we get triggered, we will get triggered. Also, that's not an issue. It just means our bodies are trying to tell us we have important things to attend to. But it's more so how we get triggered. I would invite for you to, on the last page of a notebook or your journal, if you were to check in with how things have been the past year, across each quarter, what numbers would you give yourself? Let me know if this exercise might give you some important insights for you. If this were to be projected onto the next year ahead, for the next, several quarters, what do you think might happen? As each of these metrics go down, what have you noticed in how much better you can breathe, how more relaxed you are, how have your weeks looked like? So let me know in the comments below what this exercise is like for you, or any questions or reactions you might have. And yeah, get to it.